Welcome to the Church Solutions Podcast, brought to you by JSL Solutions. The Church Solutions Podcast is designed to help equip you and your church in the use of technology and other tools and services. And now, here are your hosts, Steve Lacy and Phil Thompson.
And it's another great day to do a Church Solutions podcast.
Hi, my name is Steve Lacy.
And my name is Phil Thompson. We come to you every week. We are with a fine company called JSL Solutions. We do streaming video through the means of StreamingChurch.tv. We do mobile apps, churchapplive.com. We do church management and website templates and tools for your churches through myflock.com. And we even have another product called greeter.church, which is the ability to have a live greeter on your church website to answer people's questions when they come.
Yes, we do.
All right. So I want to make sure you agreed with me on that.
Yes.
This is always the awkward time of the podcast. All right. So we're glad you're here. Thanks so much for coming. And today we are going to talk about a subject that my church is always very interested in this, and I would think a lot of churches would be, and that would be...
The back door.
The back door. Yeah, I had to put some oil on the back door because it was squeaking at my church. And actually, I did have a backdoor problem. I had to work on the hinge the other day. Got it to work. But
I'm not sure that's what we're talking about, but that is the backdoor problem. Do you have one?
Yeah, that's a good question. So when we say backdoor, what we're talking about here is, when you have people coming and visiting your church, are they actually staying and becoming regular attenders? Are they becoming members if you have membership? Are they involved in your church? And so this is kind of a term that I think is coined by a lot of church stuff out there, and that is, hey, we got people coming, but we got a backdoor problem. They're coming, but they're leaving.
Yes,
they're leaving out the back door. We don't know what's going on. What happened to them? Where'd they go? And so this is, for me, a very interesting topic.
Yes, I thought so too.
Yeah.
So we're going to have some interesting little data here and some good rules of thumb.
Yeah. So we kind of titled this, at least right now. We may change it again by the time we put it online. But the backdoor problem. Do you have one? So we need to talk about do you have a backdoor problem? You may have a backdoor problem and not realize it, or you may think you have one and you might actually not have a problem.
Yeah, you may have a front door problem.
You have a front door problem, exactly. So a couple people wrote a book a while back called Gary McIntosh, I think, is how you say his name, and Charles Arn, or A-R-N, Charles Arn. Is that how would you say that? I don't know. But they wrote a book called What Every Pastor Should Know, 101 Indispensable Rules of Thumb for leading your church. And in this book, they had some, what you might call key metrics about tracking so you can determine whether or not you have a healthy front door, and also, talk a little bit about the back door. So what we're talking about here today is what I use the term assimilation. Some people make jokes about Star Trek or whatever, and being assimilated to the Borg or whatever it was back then. I didn't watch that TV series, but so assimilation is what we're going to talk a little bit about, and then the backdoor deal. So there you go.
Right. So the first key thing for a healthy church with a good front door is that if your church is growing, you'll need more guests each year than you have people in total in average attendance on a weekend.
Okay.
So, for example,
that's a challenge.
An illustration would be, I have a growing church of 500 on a weekend. Mm-hmm. You would need 500 guests to walk through your door in a year.
Okay.
So in a 12-month period.
All right. Those are pretty big numbers. Well, at least for some churches.
Yeah. And I thought this was a great rule of thumb. So if I've got a church of 1,000 or 10,000 or a church of 75, I'm going to want to look at my numbers and see. Yeah, it's a good indicator of if I'm not getting 75 guests in a year and I got 75, members on a weekend, I need to see about, why is that?
Why am I not growing, or why am I not reaching more people? Why am I not getting more guests?
Right.
Right.
Yes.
Okay. Some stats here that you always love. The typical growing church sees 20% of first-time guests becoming a part of the church.
Yes. So out of our 500 example, we would want
20%.
100 of those people, if they come once, they'll typically become a full-time member.
Okay. And then there's another one. Growing churches see nearly 40% of second-time guests become part of the church. So if they come twice, there's 40% chance, right?
That they'll become a member.
Right. And then the next big one is close to 60% of people will become part of your church after their third visit. And one of the things my church does is we actually encourage people. We make a little 1 or 2 liner deal that we say sometime towards the beginning of the service, somewhere like maybe right before announcements, where we welcome you and we invite you to take the 3-week challenge, and we'd encourage you to come 3 weeks to our church, because we think if you'll come 3 weeks, you'll just love us. You can't help but fall in love with us. And we kind of over exaggerate, make fun of it. We make kind of a joke out of it, but we do try to get people to come 3 times.
That way, according to these stats, 6 out of 10 will become members if they come 3 weeks.
Yeah, and so based on that information, if you're involved in leadership of your church, pastor, key volunteer, your primary goal for first-time guests should be to get them to come back.
Yes, because if I double my chances if I can get one of those first-time guests to come a second time.
Right. Now, and I think what we're trying to say here is sometimes there's this idea that, okay, they came the first time, so let's corner them somewhere and say, okay, we want to get you connected to a small group or get you serving on the hospitality team, or here, join our Bible study, and do it right now. And what we're saying here is, no, that's not the case. Just try to get them to come back.
Right. The goal, you don't want to get them completely plugged in after the first visit, because if you can get them to come back, they're going to eventually get plugged in on their own.
Right. Yeah. So, and honestly, from my experience of doing ministry, which is almost 4 decades now, believe it or not, I have found that if you plug people in, this is just my perspective, but if you get somebody and you plug them in way too fast, like we've all had this happen. I'm sure every pastor listening here, you've had somebody come to your church and go, "Oh, this is the greatest thing in the world. I love this church." It's their first time, it's just awesome. And then, 4 weeks later, you don't see them, and they disappear. And so I'm always hesitant of just, I don't want to just put somebody involved in something until they come a little bit, because, maybe we're not a good fit for them. Maybe they thought we were, but after 2 or 3 weeks, they may find that, this is not a good fit. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
that makes sense.
I know what you mean. I've, tutored or trained some people that were interested in participating in a certain area after they just started coming, and I was excited with their eagerness to get involved, and I guess I completely misread them, because they were all gung-ho, and then they never came back again.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. So the point here is just, let's just try to get them to come back. If they come the first time, encourage them to come back the second time. And we've talked about this before, but there's ways to do that, as far as maybe sending a little email out or something, that would say, "Hey, thanks for coming. We'd love to have you come back," whatever.
Right.
So, all right.
So the first thing we need to do is determine who are our first-time guests, right? So how do you measure first-time guests?
So there's a couple points there. One is really being proactive, engaging guests as soon as they walk up to the building before services. Now, when I say that, I don't mean mugging them or smothering them. I'm just saying, you want to engage them. You could set up, we're in Arizona here, so this is now getting into the time of the year where you can set up stuff outside here in Tucson, and the weather's nice, and you always get a bake. But the point is, set up something maybe by the entrance that, maybe a welcome. We used to have this years ago when you and I, back in the 90s, were at our church. We had a welcome center in our lobby, which I really liked that. I thought it was really nice. But there's a welcome center, first time guest, first time here, maybe a sign or something.
Yeah, something that says, "Is this your first time here? Start here."
Right. Yeah, a kiosk or something like that that will get people in the right direction and give you an opportunity to connect with them, not in a heavy, long-winded thing, but just something to connect and do that. So, yeah.
So next tip for figuring out, measuring your first timers is, we actually call it a connection card. I don't know what other churches are doing, but you encourage everyone to fill out a connection card and to identify, if you're a first-time guest, you mark down, I'm a first-time guest.
Yeah, and that, like what I think where you and I come from, you could put a little connection card inside your program if you have programs. Hopefully, we've talked about programs in the past, but somewhere where everybody gets a chance to fill out this card. And we encourage not just first-time people to fill out a card. We ask everybody in our services, hey, if you have a prayer request, and again, you design your connection card so that you have, people can respond to announcements with the connection card. They want to get involved in some event going on. They want a prayer request. They want to get on your newsletter. They put their email in. So you get everybody, you develop a culture of, okay, we're going to fill out our connection card. We have a deal called My Key Takeaway. So at the end of the message, people can write down what they got out of the message or what they thought they got out of it. And so the first-time person doesn't feel so awkward of, okay, I'm the only one filling this card out. Everybody's doing it.
Right.
And you would encourage the first-timers to do this, and second-timers and third-timers. And then if you're really, really, savvy, you offer the first-timers or even the second-timers a gift.
Yes. So I know what we do at our church is we say, fill out your card. If you're a first timer, hold on to it and take it over to our welcome center, and we'll give you this free gift.
Yeah, a free coffee mug or T-shirt. I don't know, whatever you're going to do.
Yeah.
We've talked about gifts before on these podcasts, but so that's a little incentive to try to get that card, because that's hard to do, and you don't want to pressure people, because people are always leery, especially today, of giving you their information, right? So it's not easy to do, but if you do it right, if you really work on it as a staff, as whoever's doing announcements, if you do it right, you should be able to get some of those cards.
Right. And one of the things that I learned from one of our pastors actually here in town that he had learned was, the simpler that communication card or connection card can be, the better. So he has reduced his to just your name and your email address.
Interesting.
So yes, and you find that you get higher participation rates if you simplify that card.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Absolutely. So that's one of the ways you could do that. It's trying to collect information on people is hard. It's delicate. It's very sensitive. But if you're able to do that, and you can do it other ways. I guess if you have a children's ministry and you require the kids need to be checked in, I would think that there's got to be some way to get a name of the parent checking in, maybe the contact information.
There's probably lots of creative ways to do it. Yeah. So back to our topic is, do we have a backdoor problem?
Yeah.
So again, kind of reinforcing because you may have, our church is not growing. What's going on? I'm not getting enough people that are coming, that are becoming members. And so the first thing to do would be to first track your first-time guests,
right,
and see if that number, you'd have to go for a year or track for a year to see if the first-time guests that you get in a year equals your weekend attendance.
Yeah. So you want the total number of guests, including kids, over 12 months to exceed your weekly average attendance.
Yes.
So yeah. Yep. So absolutely. So part of the problem here is, again, and the reason we're talking about this today is most pastors and leadership, if they want their churches to grow, so that's the big deal here. But many churches complain about this. Oh, I got a problem. I don't know how to fix it. I got this backdoor problem, and they see new people every Sunday, and so they assume people are coming to worship, but they're not really taking the steps, and they're not really sticking. Therefore, they assume they have a backdoor problem. And the reality is that in many of these instances, their number of first-time guests as a percentage of the total attendance is just really, really low.
Yeah. If you go and you run your numbers, and like I mentioned earlier, if you're getting only 30 people through the door and I run 100 on weekend, then I am way below. I have a front door problem, not a back door problem.
Exactly. And so it's a front door problem.
So how do you solve some of the front door problems? Issues?
And that's another challenge. So, of course, as we know, whether it be business or even church life, the number one reason people give for showing up to a church service, or even many times if you have a secular business and buying a product, is somebody told them about it. So in a case of a church, a friend invited them. That's overall the board, usually the number one reason.
Yeah, we got a stat here saying 75 and 80% of the people that visit the church for the first time because of an invitation from a friend.
Yeah, exactly.
So if I'm getting low numbers, I need to create an environment that my members can invite their friends and neighbors.
Yeah, and that's, and so there's, honestly, it needs to be a message that's communicated from the pulpit, the platform. It needs to be communicated from your leadership team. It needs to be part of your church's DNA, so to speak, is that you're going to invite people. You're going to invite your neighbors. You're going to invite people you work with. And, again, I know lots of churches out there, as you do too, Steve, and some of them are really, really pushy. And, and their people, unfortunately, in my opinion, are really pushy, and that turns people off. But I think there's a good way to do it. And this is probably, we don't have enough time in this podcast to go over it, but I think your messages on Sunday morning, your church services, so to speak, on Sunday morning need to be set up where you're discussing topics that are relevant to society. So, relationship issues.
So our notes here talk about creating an environment that produces life-changing.
Exactly.
Life changes, engaging worship.
Right.
And, creative elements so that the people are excited that are there to invite their friends. Nobody wants to go, you want to go listen to a really boring sermon this next Sunday by this monotone guy that's...
And this is where, I understand, this is where it gets hard. It gets very difficult because, this is where it takes the work, is creating, as you just said, an environment where it's conducive to inviting new people. And Christians are notorious for not really understanding that, and we many Christians just go to church out of tradition. They go because their parents did. They go because they think it's the right thing to do. But, you get somebody that's not been in that environment, or certainly not in it for a long time, and you try to get them to come to your church, and your church is just not relevant to where they're at, where these new people are at, they're not going to come. Or they're not going to come back. Yeah,
they may not come back, and the person, the member may not be excited about inviting them. Yeah. So, but if you do have your numbers, you got good ratios on first time guests versus your weekend attendance, and you're finding that your church is not growing by the percentages we talked about earlier.
Right.
And so, and also, shameless plug for some of our church management tools. We have features in there to track first timers, second timers, third timers, and be able to run reports and see what's going on, and follow up with the second time, the first timers, second timers, and third timers.
You're talking about myflock.com.
Yes.
And which people, if they happen to use StreamingChurch.tv, they already have access to those tools.
Yeah. So,
or even churchapplive.com, which is the mobile app, they have access to the church management tools you're referring to.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
So, one of the things, if you do have a backdoor problem, you need to be diligent about recognizing it. And, they say, what's the old saying? What you measure is what gets done.
Yeah.
So if you're measuring the drop-off rate of first to second time, or second time to third time, or third time to not becoming a member, if you're on top of it, measuring it, you'll recognize where the issues are, and you can put things in place to do that.
Right.
A lot of times it's an assimilation, discipleship kind of thing to allow avenues for people to get involved and
getting connected.
Be connected with your ministry.
Yeah. So if your first-time guest numbers are much higher than your overall attendance, but your attendance is still not growing,
then you got a backdoor problem.
Then you have a backdoor problem. And if that's the case, your first step is going to be, consider, okay, how can you get these people connected that are coming, discipleship programs, some way to get them, small group, getting involved in a small group, getting involved in some of the programs at the church. Those would be, one of the things you'd have to really work on. But because, boy, there's nothing more frustrating if you have lots of people coming and they're not coming, they're not staying. So if you have a front door challenge, though, it's time to focus on something, creating some kind of an environment, service environments that compel people to invite their friends. So absolutely.
All right.
Interesting stuff. I like some of these stats myself.
I always like good rules of thumb. I mean, even with, we run an online business, you would call this our sales funnel. Yeah. And if you're not getting people on the fat end of the funnel, then you got a problem.
Right.
Or if you're getting enough people through the fat end and they're not, you're sticking. Your 20, 40, or 60 percenters aren't coming around, and you need to take action.
Yeah.
So it's a management problem.
Yep.
So
and in church we would call it a leadership problem.
Yes.
and that's hard to swallow, especially if you're a pastor right now listening to this, or you're a key leader in your church and you've got some of these issues we talked about. I know it's hard to swallow. I've been there. And probably still am, because I do a little part-time work at my church. So the book is What Every Pastor Should Know, 101 Indispensable Rules of Thumb for Leading Your Church. You might want to consider that. And if we can help you with some of this, certainly let us know. If you got something to add to this, you think this is just totally out to lunch and we're just, we're crazy, we'd love to hear from you as well. Good or bad, we always like input. Support at StreamingChurch.tv is one of the ways you can get a hold of us. And as Steve just mentioned, we do have some really nice church management tools that are available at myflock.com. And again, if you do video, streaming video, you've already got access to that. And you can do a free trial, if you're curious. So anyhow, good stuff. All right. So I guess we're out of time. We're done. And you can listen to this podcast. You can actually subscribe to this podcast by doing what, Steve? How can people get this on a regular basis on their phone? On their phone.
So if you're an iPhone user, then you would go to iTunes and find us in iTunes and subscribe, and it will show up on your iTunes list. If you're on Android phone, you can go to your favorite podcast player and search for Church Solution Podcast and subscribe. We're on Stitcher Radio and anywhere you're the better podcasts are found.
Yeah, the better ones, of course, us. So Church Solutions Podcast. That's what it's called, and we're floating around on we're somewhere on YouTube. We got the audio on YouTube. I think if you look for StreamingChurch.tv's channel, you'll hear the audio on YouTube. So we'd love to have you subscribe to us. That way you get us every week. And no muss, no fuss. All right. I'm Phil Thompson. He's Steve Lacy. Thanks for listening. We hope you have a great day, and we will catch you next time on another edition of the Church Solutions Podcast.